Go.
So, Crystal, I'm assuming we've got an audience now.
You do.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Really appreciate you coming by and visiting our booth. Today we're going to talk about some things that I think are pretty interesting for both educators and industry. Specifically, we're going to have Scott Stewart, who is our Aviation Business Development Manager for the for U.S. and international, as well as, so he'll do the majority of the talk, and then we're going to have Earl Bailey, who is the National Education Partnerships Manager, myself, you can see them all there, and then Barrett Crane, who's the National Education Manager. Scott, I'm going to kind of let you kick it off here in a second, but what I really wanted to show is that, you know, when people think of Snap-on, they think of you know, automotive, or they think of the mom and pop shops and the white trucks. But I just wanted to, you know, make it clear that we've been supporting aviation since 1932. We've been in business since 1920. So as I mentioned earlier, this is our 100th year. You know, we probably wish we were started in 2021 so that next year would be the celebration, because that's frankly when we're going to celebrate it, I'm sure. You know, on to bigger and better things. So let me move on to Scott Stewart's presentation. So Scott, take it away.
Sure. So basically, my role with Snap-on is I work with both OEM and MRO operations in the aerospace and aviation world around the U.S. and North America and Canada. And what I'm seeing is there's a change going on in the MRO world, particularly. So, you know, one of the things that we're seeing is emerging technologies. And if you look at this slide, you're hearing things about augmented reality and virtual reality, and on how those are being used to train technicians or to actually perform work, you know, where engineers can advise technicians how to work around an apparatus or a product or something to get to the component. We also see drones being used in the MRO world to inspect fuselages on aircraft that technicians used to do basically above ground, which is not very safe. So they're using that technology to perform those tasks. 3D printing is another one for components for aircraft are being produced now. Big data, smart devices are being used to go paperless around the MRO work and be more efficient. Robotics and even smart tools are being used, like you see in the bottom right-hand corner, where those basically are recording measurements, you know, and things on fasteners that were done manually in the past. So these are great technologies, and they're coming. In fact, some of the educators in this audience may actually be offering programs based on some of these technologies. Next slide, John. But really at the core of the MRO world still is the aviation maintenance technician or mechanic. That's really the basis of the MRO world still. So, you know, these same concepts of emerging technologies, now the MROs are starting to look at what can we do to also enhance our workforce. And so they're taking some best practices from the OEM world, like Lean and 5S, and basically continuous improvement, and they're trying to basically copy that, you know, and use it in their facilities to become more effective, more productive, and more profitable. So one of the things they look at right off the bat is the AMT and how productive they are. You know, they're saying, okay, what can we do to get more work out of our workforce to be competitive? And so they start looking at things like the tooling that they use. Okay, so a lot of it is employee owned tooling, and it's managed by the technician. There's no control over it. So what's happening today is we're seeing things that share tool storage systems and solutions that are automated and track the tools just like an unmanned tool crib. And also they're looking to decentralize the footprint of a tool crib that they used to have in the old models of the aviation MRO world. Also, they're looking at having the tools right at the point of work where technicians aren't traveling over large distances of hangar space to go check out a tool out of a tool crib that they personally cannot own, like calibrated tools and that type of product. They're also looking to standardize. You know, they have a workforce that sometimes gets loaned out to other locations, and if they can standardize their programs that have multiple locations, they can transfer technicians without having to move tooling. Of course, enhancing safety is always at the core of their focus. So if you can have the job done faster, more efficiently, and it's safer, it's always a plus for that company. And they're installing things like safety management systems, SMSs. They also want to be compliant with government regulations like EASA and the FAA and so on and so forth. And then they're also addressing the ongoing technician shortage, and of course the COVID-19 crisis is not helping that challenge for them either. Next slide, John. So this is kind of what a large MRO looks like today, whether it's an airline or a third-party MRO. They have basically these large areas where they're warehousing mechanics tools today. And if you look at these, this takes up quite an expansive, very valuable hangar space. And there's no control over these tools. Some of these locations, like the bottom left-hand corner, there's well over 1 million hand tools in that operation that are not managed under any program. They go in and out of aircraft daily with no check or audit capability. So that's something that's also changing, is the safety aspect, but they're also looking at all the other boxes that it checks if you start looking at this change in the way that they manage their technicians. Next slide. So the core of our program is called Snap-on's Level 5 Tool Control, which is a variety of different solutions and programs. But basically, the bell cow of that product line really is the bottom right-hand corner, that blue toolbox you see there. It says Automated Tool Control. That has been really the game changer in the MRO industry today. This system basically manages the tooling for the mechanics just like a tool crib attendant would, but that box is point of use. It's right next to the aircraft. So now products like torque wrenches and meters and calipers and all those things that the technician could not own themselves in their own personal toolbox, tire pressure gauges, for example, they have to go to a tool crib, check those out, bring them back to the workspace, and then utilize them and then return them. And that takes up time, and that's lost productivity time. So that's really where we see a lot of MRO customers gravitating today, is multi-technician boxes that are managed with automated solutions. Next slide. So this is a great example of a fully integrated MRO facility. If you look at this operation, you'll see there's 4 bays spread out into 2 hangars. And the point of use tool storage is actually color coded here. If you look at the yellow mechanic boxes here, there's basically 16 of those throughout the operation there. And that's the largest tool load of the operation. And so it supports 6 mechanics at one time on one shift. The other color, which is another color there, is brown, which represents the avionics boxes, and those support additional 8 mechanics per box. And there's less of those because there's less avionics work being done on the aircraft. And then the 4 green boxes, those are the sheet metal structures boxes, and those also support 6 AMTs. So if you add that all together, basically those 28 toolboxes are supporting 200 AMTs over one shift. So if you extrapolate that out to 3 shifts, that's really replacing 600 mechanic boxes that would normally be in this MRO with 28 smart boxes or automated tool control boxes. Go ahead, John. This is an example of that operation, or a picture of that operation before they were deployed to their locations throughout the hangars. And again, if you picture these systems, they run standalone. They're communicating to an administrator in that MRO operation and telling them what tools are checked out, to what aircraft, by what mechanic, and they track those tools or those assets until they're returned before that aircraft goes back into operation. So it's a safe, secured process for them. Go ahead, John. It's so important to one of these customers of ours that they have a command center in one of their operations, and it basically has 12 screens. And if you look at the top of that row there, second one to the right, that's our admin software that runs all those toolboxes and manages all the assets within those, which is tens of thousands of tools. And it tracks them down to the mechanic, the aircraft, like I say, and the tool itself. The idea here is they're using it as one of their metrics they measure to make sure that they are on task with those aircraft. If you look right below where it says level 5 ATC, you'll see there's some color coding there, red and green. When there's a red alert there, that's addressing something that's going on with one of the toolboxes, one of the tools with one of the mechanics. That could be an overdue calibration date for a torque wrench or a meter or something. That could be a broken tool. It could be a lost tool. Those alerts are immediately sent out to the administrator on a smart device, where that could be your a smartphone, it could be a tablet, could be an iPad, it could be their computer, and that's communicating to those administrators 24/7. So they have live information on what's happening with all of the tools or all the assets in those systems every day of the week while they have the aircraft in the hangar, which is critical for this operation. Another example of the same footprint is Delta Airlines, a much larger MRO example. This location has over 5,000 mechanics. You can imagine the space that 5,000 mechanic boxes take up in that operation. Again, these are color coded to a specific discipline. The blue box there is the AMT box, or the general mechanic box. The orange is the avionics box, and the yellow is the sheet metal structures box. Again, point of use right next to the aircraft, minimizing the amount of trips to the tool crib, and really getting the most out of the hourly work by the mechanic. Another example of that, Virgin Atlantic in the UK, same idea, same setup, point of view solution, color-coded discipline boxes. Go ahead. So Snap-on usually gets involved very early on in a process like converting a company over to what we call the workbay of the future. And that means that we might be involved very early in CATIA, or CAD drawings, of the layout of the facility. And we work, basically closely with the design folks when they're laying out the hangar. And it's going to be, input from the customer is going to be the number of technicians that are going to be operating on a shift, where the aircraft are going to be positioned in the facility, what the shifts are going to look like, if there's any logistics issues that we might run into. And as we start to formulate this, we start to develop a solution for them that's very specific and designed for that end user, and none of them are the same. So at the end result will look like this, an end product. Next slide. So it goes from concept to the reality of strategically placed boxes where you get the most amount of productivity out of the AMTs, and the work location for those aircraft. Next slide. These are just an example of some of the companies that we have implemented the automation and the tool control solutions in the MRO world. This is a little dated, so Delta Airlines, for example, is not on here, and Virgin Atlantic's not here, but basically we have programs very similar in all these operations around the world. The next slide gives you an example of some of the OEMs that we have deployed these, and this kind of came out of the OEM world initially 10, 12 years ago, and now it's, like I say, now going and adding to the MRO world and other critical industries. Military is another one, and other industries, oil and gas, power gen. Anybody that wants to control assets, improve productivity, enhance their safety, that's all, this can, work for any of those industries. Next slide. So a lot, what happens is the customers come to us and say, hey, we're very interested in looking at this for all those reasons. It checks a lot of boxes for us. Now we have to find out, how we pay for this and what the return on investment is. So we try to help the customers with that. If you look at some of these examples here, AMT productivity gain, that's pretty simple. A lot of the companies that I worked with have done time studies. They've actually clocked and measured how long it takes a technician to get their tools before they actually start to work, how much time they spend in lines checking tools out, those type of things, and they start putting a value to that, an hourly rate, and they start to look at that. That could be sometimes tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost productivity, where the tech is actually not doing the work that they were hired for. Inefficiencies. If you've been in an MRO, especially around a shift change, or at the start of a day or the end of a day for a technician, these lines start to increase at the tool cribs because they're returning tools or they're checking tools out. And it's not unusual to see 10, 12, 15, 20 techs waiting in line on the clock to check out tools that could be point of use right at the aircraft and managed the same way as a tool crib. Safety is always important. So sometimes the tools are not available, so technicians take shortcuts and they use the incorrect tool or an incorrect tool for the job, and they could potentially damage the aircraft, or they could possibly be hurt during the process. Next slide. Logistics. Important too here is looking how tools are deployed, where they should be deployed, what type. And perfect example of that are those discipline-specific boxes. You have the right tools for the right technician at the right point of the aircraft. So logistics is very, very important. Again, you can put an equation to that and calculate what you're losing in that part of it. Floor space is another one too. It could be measured, whether you're leasing the hangar space or you're owning it or whatever, or you're measuring, your profit from the square footage of your facility. It's real simple to put some math to that too. And again, if you remember that earlier slide, some of those boxes are taking up, those mechanic boxes are taking up tens of thousands of square feet that it's unproductive. Of course, we're always worried about catastrophic loss. That's one of the main concerns. So you hear terminology like FOD prevention, or FME. That's basically just saying we don't want to leave any item that's not supposed to be in an aircraft when it goes into operation. So what a great solution is having a system that automatically does that for you and tells you the tools are not returned from that aircraft. So this is a huge one, especially for customers that have military contracts or government contracts. Next slide. And of course, you always want to be compliant with government regulation. One of the biggest headaches around that is the FAA basically not happy with the way you manage calibrated and certified tools, those type of things. Standardization is also important because if you couldn't have the same footprint of the tooling and the program as far as tool control and managing the assets in multiple locations, it's easy to transfer employees in and out. Some companies look at wanting to be the leader in the industry for a number of reasons. They might want to secure additional business by showing their customer that they operate as safely as possible with the latest and greatest technology. And of course, employee benefits. One of the challenges today for MROs is attracting people to the industry, then getting them hired and then keeping them. So if you had a benefit saying, hey, if you come to work for our company, you don't have to invest in tooling to come to work for us. You've already invested in your education. You graduated from your A&P school. We're not going to burden you with another expense of having to buy additional tools. You can come to work for us, and we're going to provide you with the latest and greatest technology program on the planet. And by the way, we take another thing off your plate. You don't have to worry about managing those tools or accounting for those. The system will do it for you. Next slide.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Scott. I'm sure we'll pull you back in toward the end. One thing that we also wanted to make available was a Zoom meeting after this, in case anyone has any questions, but I'm going to try to speed through this next portion of slides so that we can then share that link. Actually, Earl Bailey, if you wanted to email that to Crystal, that would probably be great, or share it in the chat with Crystal. So, as Scott said, thank you very much. As Scott had said with that helicopter image, one of the things that Snap-on provides is that what we call business solutions. So things like working on CAD layouts with industry, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's wind energy, whether it's Penske's garage for NASCAR or something. So obviously we do the same, whether it's Gulfstream, Boeing, et cetera. So what we try to do then is take the lessons that we've learned and share those with schools as they decide they're going to, put up a new hangar or retrofit an old hangar, or even just coming up with a design for a classroom space. So Snap-on does that as just part of, what we try to be is a partner more than a vendor, so that there's no fee associated with that. So here's just an example of one of those. This is actually FlightWorks Alabama, which is in partnership with Airbus. So in Mobile, Alabama, they've got a program where they actually are training students, and then when those students finish this program, they have a really pretty much a guaranteed job with Airbus. So some of the examples, I'm not going to really talk too much about these, but just the different cabinet layouts. So what you see here is the CAD layout of what it would look like. The actual image here at FlightWorks Alabama, it's a kind of a hands-on museum space or exhibit space. But simple things, even like mobile workstations, so that you could have a flexible workspace. Again, the actual, after seeing it in the CAD layout. And then much like you saw at the beginning of our slides, that picture of WSU Tech back when it was WATC. We had some other layouts as well. So then what I also wanted to talk about, something that we shared at the ATEC conference last year. We did a hands-on program where we talked about different aviation-related certifications. So one of those specifically structural sheet metal assembly. I'm not going to go into great detail, but please feel free to contact me. You can also email education@snapon.com, and that'll go to myself or Earl Bailey. You also see that there is a Zoom invite where we can talk one-on-one as well. And so what you see here is a really project-based certification. So one of the compliments that we've received in the past is that our certifications really have teeth. So all of our certifications, whether it's that structural sheet metal assembly, whether it's high reliability wiring with Daniels or DMC crimping tools, what we call precision electrical termination, these are all hands-on trainings that we work with NC3, the National Coalition of Certification Centers, as our accrediting body, but they've also been doing some virtual train the trainers, seeing as we're in this COVID-19 era. But our bread and butter certainly is the in-person hands-on train the trainers, but this is something that allows your students to take these programs and then augment their Part 147 certificate, where they can get some stackable certificates from some industry known globally recognized brands like Daniels, Snap-on, in this case Starrett with our precision measuring instruments. This one is actually 6 certifications. So they get everything from your basic tape and rule all the way down to micrometers, and both in metric and standard. And then a really fundamental one, mechanical and electronic torque instruments. So they're learning really some aha moments that, things like if it says you want 40 foot-pounds and you use a lubricated fastener instead of a dry fastener, you're going to see that that clamping force is exponentially gone up, right? So you don't want to go against what the book says. No one knows that better than in aviation. So there's lots of hands-on aha moments here, a lot of training aids. You can see an example in that bottom right image where we're actually teaching rotational torque and torque angle, and then you've got some digital torque testers that partner up with the curriculum very nicely. And then one of the most fundamental, obviously, electrical measurement through the use of a DVOM or a multimeter. And this one is probably our, this along with with precision measuring is probably our most popular certification, just because it is such a fundamental skill. Quickly, just want to talk about NC3. Again, they handle our curriculum, they handle our testing site, they do the trainings related. Obviously, they work with us or Daniels or Starrett when it comes to actually writing the curriculum, so that they have that industry, subject matter expert working on it with them, but putting it into a language that educators can understand. There is no fee for the student to earn the certificate. So whether that student, can afford to or not afford, extra charges, this is something that once the school is invested in the training and the equipment, there is no fee to the student. So whether the school certifies 5 or 500,000 students, there's no additional fee. One thing I want to touch on before we talk about talk about our Q&A session after this and at the Zoom conference meeting is the aerospace maintenance competition, which obviously was postponed this year. But this is something that Snap-on sponsors, and it is just an unbelievable event where you have a number of schools, both high schools and college, Part 147 obviously. You have military, so Coast Guard, Navy, Air Force, you have all different commercial airlines, you have different teams from all over, and it's a really impressive event, and Snap-on's a proud sponsor of that event. and it's typically at the MRO Americas trade show, which again, did not happen this year. And then just real quickly, just my information and Scott Stewart's. Again, as Crystal put up in the chat, if you need to email us, just education@snapon.com and we can get you. But that's my cell phone, that's Scott's cell phone. I am going to attempt to stop sharing now so that I can, let's see here, so that I can just talk about quickly jumping to the next thing here. I feel like I'm not going to name who I feel like right now, Crystal, but
you're doing great. I mean,
how do I stop?
At you.
I am embarrassing myself. There we go. That do it? Yeah, there we go.
You're just trying. I could have helped you. I didn't know what you're trying to do.
I don't speak in complete sentences all the time, Crystal. So no worries.
All right. Hey, Team Snap-on. Thanks. So, John, is the Zoom open? Like, what's the deal with the Zoom?
Zoom will be opening in, I guess, 3 minutes. I'm sure if you jump on now, that 2 minutes, Earl says. Earl, you look like you're actually like NFL Tonight. I like that backdrop.
You're in broadcast?
I had to pretend like, these are all my wife's books. You guys know me, I'm not a reader, but I figured I'd put myself in front of her books. But
good job.
We'll have that Zoom meeting, and we look forward to answering any, one-on-one questions, anything that we can assist with. If you've got a new program coming up, or even if you just came in late and want to see some of those early slides, don't hesitate to ask. So really appreciate the opportunity. And Crystal, you'll get me everyone's addresses and I can mail these off.
As well as on it. She'll send you a link.
Door prize winners as well?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
As always. Thank you, Crystal.
Thanks a lot. All right. Thanks, Crystal. Great job.
All right, Sam Lee with Integra, you're up next.